Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and video show which brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, and experience from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe so you won't miss a new episode. I'm your host, Frits Bussemaker, and today I'm delighted and I have privilege to have a conversation with Dan Corbin. Dan, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Now, normally at this stage, Dan, I would introduce people, the guest, by reading up a small profile. In this case, I just want to share the chance meeting you and I had a couple of weeks ago, because
Okay.
we're both moving out our kids from the dormitory. They were both studying, graduating at Southern New Hampshire, and as parents do, you need to help out. You were getting a lot of stuff out. I was getting a lot of stuff out. And I think we exchanged like maybe one or two lines where you said, "Oh, this is what I'm doing." And I said, "Hey, that is so interesting. I want to get you on The Brand Called You because I think there was a great story to tell there." Because what I remember from our interaction is you have a metalworks background, but at a certain moment in time, you needed to make a career change. And thanks to your wife, she said, "Well, why don't you go into jewelry because that's metalworking as well."
Correct.
So that's the beginning of my interest to get you on the program. You live in Montana, if I believe.
I do.
So
Right.
why don't we get started? Why don't you tell me, first of all, what was the metalwork you were doing?
Well, I actually joined the U.S. Army as a machinist, and we did small welding. Um, it's that started from in high school. I did all your shop classes, metal shop, uh, and found out I really enjoyed working with metal.
Yeah.
When I came out of the service, I worked as a prototype machinist for a few years and then switched over to a job shop that we kind of fixed and repaired anything you could think of, from a broken tractor to a broken Model A to we have parts on some of the satellites that orbit the Earth.
Oh,
So it
wow.
was a real fun shop to work in. We did a lot of one-off pieces,
That's
but
that actually, I mean, trucks and farming equipment. I can understand that, but you would just put in there, okay, satellites. And so there are satellites in space with your welding in it.
some not welding, but more parts
Yeah.
that we repaired
Ah,
for them. There were a shop real close to us dealt with lenses that were on some of the different telescopes and stuff, and some of the brackets they needed to transport the lenses we built so they wouldn't be damaged in transport, as well as some of the bracketry that holds it. For some reason, they approached our shop to build some of the stuff. So I mean, it was a very unique shop to work for
oh, I can
because
imagine
it
that.
was just a
Yeah.
small town job shop. If you walked in, you wouldn't think we would do that kind of capability of stuff, but it was
Yeah.
very enjoyable to work there.
Yeah. So did you brag to your friends and family, "I'm actually working in the space industry," or was that too far-fetched?
Yeah, I didn't stretch it quite that far.
Okay. But so at a certain point, as mentioned, you needed to change career. I don't know if you want to share the audience why
Yeah.
that happened, but you did.
Basically, when I was in the service, I was injured, and because of the injury, I was starting to take meds to be able to stand at the machining equipment, and taking medication and standing at a machine that could rip your arm off isn't a smart thing. So both my boss and I kind of agreed that I needed to find a different profession.
Yeah.
And when I went home, I sat down with, at the time, my girlfriend, and explained, I've worked metal my whole life. Now what in the heck am I supposed to do? And that's where she came up with, well, jewelry is still metal. It's just smaller. And I said, yeah, you're right. And I had bought her a bracelet that she needed to get sized. And when she took it to the jeweler to have him size it, she asked if he would ever do an apprenticeship. And the gentleman said, yeah, my dad was a machinist. I understand what he's capable of. Yeah, I'd love to do an apprenticeship with him. So
Wow.
I started working for him, and he had me do a school intensive to learn more about jewelry. And I still laugh because the instructors kept asking me, are you sure you've never done jewelry before? And it's like the tolerances that we had to do at the job shop were much more strict than what jewelry is, because jewelry, as long as it looks pretty and the stone doesn't fall out, you're all good. So, we started that. I started working for him in, I think it was 97, 98. And I worked for him for about 2.5 years. And because of my previous knowledge, he, as I joke with everybody, he bought a Harley and left, and I ran his store for a year.
Uh-huh. Oh,
So much for the apprenticeship. I had to kind of learn on my own as I was going.
okay.
And
No, go ahead.
well, you know, and then later, about 2000, we had a disagreement that I don't want to go into, because it really doesn't have to do with business. But my kid had a school function that I told him I wanted to go to, and he told me if I left, I was fired. So I kindly waved at him and left, because family is always more important than a job.
Hey, sounds like you got your priorities right there. But I was just wondering, I want to come back to a remark. I just want to check on something. You mentioned that your girlfriend at the time, now your wife, suggested, hey, why don't you do this? Did you immediately embrace the idea, or did you have a hard think about it? Hey, is that something I want to do? Or was
No,
an epiphany?
actually, it was more of an epiphany, because it was I know jewelry is metal, and when I went and talked to him and kind of looked at it, there's many times that I'd wished I had learned about jewelry before,
Yeah.
because I don't know that I would have gone into machining, just because jewelry, I've always been creative. I like drawing, and I love talking to people. So, I mean, as a machinist, you don't get to talk to people. Yeah. As a jeweler, you're always talking to your customers that you're selling stuff.
So you produce jewelry, and
correct.
So when you split up with the and you went on your own, how long was that ago?
That was in 2000. Okay. And that was a very scary endeavor, because part of me was thinking maybe I should go find someone else to go to work for.
Yeah.
But I had been self-employed several times prior.
Yeah.
So I wasn't afraid of taking a chance. And I mean, I guess going with your show to help other people, that's probably the biggest thing we as people struggle with, because you have the people that are willing to take a chance and push themselves out there, knowing that sometimes you fail and you have to pick yourself back up and regroup. And sometimes regrouping is getting another job. Sometimes regrouping is figuring out what you're doing wrong with your business.
Yeah.
But it was kind of funny, because when I was still with the other company, I had been helping 3 different customers on a custom ring. And when I was no longer there, they actually looked me up in the phone book and called me like a week later and said, can you still finish our ring for us? And I said, well, I'm not with Artisan anymore. I've started my own business. And they go, that's fine. We'll switch to you. So within less than a month, I sold my first 3 rings.
Wow. And that, that sounds like a very good start of the business. 3 rings.
Yeah, it was definitely a great direction. When we first started the business, we were kind of mimicking what a standard jewelry store has, and we bought inventory but we were doing everything kind of out of our house. I had a full studio set up at the house, and we'd just invite customers, sit them down at the kitchen table, and work with them on either showing them what we had or what I could make them. And within about 2 years, I realized 90% of my customers wanted a custom piece. They didn't want to buy something that was off the shelf that anybody could go buy. So we got rid of 90% of all of our inventory, and we switched our business to a by appointment only. And I joked that we were traveling jewelers because I would have customers call me up and we would go out to their house and
Wow.
and work with them.
And so can do you have an idea what the secret is? Is that the fact that you can communicate with people, or is the fact that you know how to work metal? What is it, the combination of
it,
above? What makes you successful?
it definitely is a combination of both, because so many jewelers or jewelry stores try and push a customer into buying something.
Yeah.
And my theory in life has always been, we all deserve to make money. No one should get rich off of one person, and they should be happy when they leave. There shouldn't be a buyer's remorse. So in talking with people, the trick in my industry is being able to decipher what they're telling you and what they want. And sometimes that's perfectly aligned, and sometimes you have to take their idea and educate them on what's the best way to make it.
Is that something you learn on the way? Is that experience, or are there guidelines you can learn from a book?
With me, most of that was, I grew up on a ranch. So I've worked a farm. I worked for my dad, which was a carpenter that, we did from the bottom of the house to the very finished work that the customer was trying to tell you how they wanted it to look. And you had to kind of take their idea and be able to make the wood do what they wanted. Well, it's that same technique with the metalworking. Is, I had, it was actually my nephew's fiance, that she was an artist, and she drew this beautiful ring. And so I carved it up out of wax and showed her, and she goes, well, I want it smaller and lighter. So I redesigned it again, and she goes, no, I want it smaller and lighter. And finally I looked at my nephew and said, you came to me for my expertise. And he said, yeah. I said, do you want a ring that is going to last you 6 months or the rest of your marriage? And he goes, well, obviously the rest of my marriage. And I said, then you have to trust me that I can't keep going smaller and lighter, or it's not going to last. It's going to, I hate to say this, but I said Walmart ring, because Walmart ring, they make them as light as they can, so they're as inexpensive. But unfortunately, a Walmart ring will last about 6 months, and they start to dent or bend, or stones start falling out of them.
Oh, and sorry, I have to ask, by the way, are they still married?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so the ring is still relevant.
Still going good.
Good. Okay, yeah, good. So that's knowledge you just learn from experience,
kind of along the way through experience, and a lot of it is how I want to be treated when I go buy a car.
Yeah.
Do I want the pushy salesman that wants me to buy it right now, or do I want the salesman that's going to give me all the answers to my questions and still let me go home and make my decision without him calling me 50 times?
Yeah. Practice. Yeah. I get your point. So the designs, where do you draw your inspiration from? How do you come up with a ring design? Is that something you start off with and then find a client, or is it always the client who determines, okay, this is what I'm looking for. Can you build it for
I
me?
would say 90% of my customers, it's the client comes and kind of gives me an idea or talks to me about what they would like. And then I take my design, whether I'm drawing it or designing it on the computer, um, and then show them kind of rendering ideas and directions.
Okay, so it's an iterative process to get there. Now,
Yeah.
is there are your clients who have a custom ring, are they typically from can you recognize them, or can they come from all sorts of walks of life?
I mean the way we work, I've got customers kind of all over the U.S. In fact, I've made a ring for a couple in Germany.
Hmm.
So I mean that's the fun part about how I do it, and with the new internet and stuff, it really doesn't matter where they are. You can kind of talk and work through things and figure out. Yeah,
Yeah,
and yeah, like my wife just said, half the time we don't know.
yeah, okay,
Um, uh, 90% of our business is referral or how I met you.
yeah,
I don't advertise. I guess if I was new to the business or trying to start a business, you have to advertise. But the hard part is you end up spending a ton of money or a ton of time trying to advertise, competing with all the other people that are doing the same thing.
yeah. Now,
So
now you've told me when we met that also you actually have a number of clients, at least one who actually is quite famous, at least in the States.
correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, Guy Fieri is a Food Network chef, and as kids we knew each other, kind of goofing around at a fair.
yeah,
And when he came out of college, he started a couple restaurants, and he came to me and asked me to make his first ring. And if you go on to Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, which is one of his shows, the very first episodes, he wears an Italian horn that has pave diamonds in it. That was one of the first pieces we made for him. And now his iconic necklace is a chef's hat with a skull, and it's all pavéed out with black diamonds and white diamonds. But I mean, he came to me with a logo for Knuckle Sandwich, which is the chef hat and skull.
yeah.
And I hand carved it, and made the pendant, because about 10 years after he was getting more and more famous, he was getting around more rap stars and stuff. And one of them said, "Oh, we could make you a better skull and crossbones." And so he called me and asked me if I could make it. And I said, "Yeah, but it wouldn't look like your logo." And he goes, "Oh, you're right."
Yeah.
So that idea went out the books.
Okay.
So I mean, yeah, I could have, in a standard jeweler, I would have remade him whatever he
Yeah.
wanted and charged him.
Okay.
But
But there's also a great lesson to learn that that's also uh, you are the expert, and you also sometimes you have to say no to people and not give them what they want, and make sure that they get what
well,
they.
make sure they are going to get truly what they want, not what someone's talked them into thinking they want.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that's where I laugh, because yeah, I could have made another $5,000 to $10,000 making him a new pendant, but then he wouldn't have been happy with it.
Yeah.
So then he would have been less likely to come back to me later.
Yeah. And but I assume having somebody like him wearing your jewelry does help, or is it something in the day to day? Normally, you would know about that. So, is he like the personification of what you do, or is that something you just because you know each other? It's for him.
It's more just because I know him. I
Yeah.
mean, I was fortunate enough to be able to make a key ring
Yeah.
for Sammy Hagar,
Hmm.
which he told me it's on his Ferrari keychain, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't expect to get any more business because of him wearing that.
Yeah.
I know Guy, if someone asks him where he got something, he sends them to me. but I know the 3 or 4 articles that he told me he was going to talk about me, um, like Rolling Stones, they cut out my name and everything.
Yeah,
So
unfortunately, that's life. They want to talk to him. They don't want him to pitch
advertise
brand
someone
or
else.
product. So I understand where they're coming from. He probably did that, but they cut it out,
Right.
which we'll don't do in this show. So that's good. We'll just
Yeah. And you know, his son, because I made his son's ring, his engagement ring. And in the interview, I could see where he was starting to talk about me, and the interviewer cut it out.
okay. Well,
So
okay, but then again, as you mentioned, it's word of mouth.
right,
But then
and the, and that's I don't rely on advertising, which is what that would be.
yeah,
I've had a few people look me up because of stuff I've made for Guy, because on his webpage it says who made it. Most of them want me to reproduce it and make it for them, and I won't do that. Um, I would say, well, all my rings, unless it's a standard design, are customs. If it's a custom, I won't remake it for somebody else. You know, we'll tweak it, make
yeah.
it a little bit different, but I would rather make your ring than make a ring of a copy of something else I made.
Um, that's how hard is that principle for you?
Actually, it's the principle's real easy.
Yeah,
Uh,
but okay,
the
keeping that principle to the principle.
yeah, keeping the principle. You got to remember some of these rings, like a Tiffany ring, which Tiffany has tried to sue people for copying one of their rings. And the first thing that's brought up in court is that ring's been made for 100 years. You don't have the right to say it's your ring.
Yeah.
It's that there are similar rings and you can tweak designs, but you can only tweak them so much because, you know, everything is duplicated so much. But I mean, I won't purposely try and remake the same ring for another customer. I will make something similar. It'll have a little bit different shape. And that's pretty easy for me since I'm doing everything
Yeah,
myself anyway.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
or my wife and I
yeah,
should say.
yeah, yeah. And I realize any ring out there, I would say almost it needs to go on a finger. So that's probably a restriction in dimensions to begin with.
Right. I mean, there's what's called a Euro shank ring, which is kind of a square outside, round inside, and then your standard round ring.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's yeah. So, if you would translate this, you could say these rules or principles, um, are there any other rules or principles you apply when going out doing your work?
well, I mean, our design slogan on our business card on our business is designing memories to last a lifetime. So when I'm designing something,
Yeah, and
I
I can
would
vouch it. I
rather,
actually have it right here, so it's true.
yeah, in designing it, I would rather put a little bit more gold in it and know that the ring is going to last than be worried about, oh, I need to save a tenth of a gram of gold.
Yeah.
You know, and some of the big companies that are making 100,000 rings, if they can save a tenth of a gram of gold on every ring, they're saving a lot of gold.
Yeah.
But with an independent shop like ours, um, I would rather know that when I'm making the ring, the customer's not going to have problems with it down the road. They're going to come back to me to either check to make sure prongs haven't worn out, or we're going to make something else.
So, just out of curiosity, I don't know if you know the answer to the following question I have is when the referral uh your referrals you get are the referrals based on the product or the principles how you develop and provide that product?
I think most of my referrals is because my customers are comfortable with me. That I mean, I'm assuming it's because they feel I've never tried to push them into something. and that my quality of work is above par, above what you can get at most places. Um,
So yeah,
it's go ahead.
yeah. No, that's good. Just wondering if you've been in a situation now that you were an apprentice all those years ago. Have people been coming and knocking on your door?
I've never had, I mean, I have offered to jewelers and I've given a lot of information. One of the local shops, they hired a newer jeweler, that I give them a lot of advice, partly because, as people in my trade keep saying, there's only so many of us that have a lot of knowledge, and if
Yeah,
we don't pass it on to the younger generation, the trade's going to be lost. And there's a lot of techniques that are already starting to be lost, for either one, that the jeweler that knows how to do it doesn't want to share it because he's afraid of competition, or he ends up dying or having a stroke or something and he can't pass it on. um
yeah,
you know One of the instructors that uh, I did my intensive with, um, his name's Alan Revere, and he ran the Revere Academy in San Francisco, and he closed it, oh, at least 8 years ago, and he just now is starting to do private lessons and classes again, um, in Sausalito, just because he's realized that a lot of the information he has, there aren't a lot of jewelers that know how to do it. So if he doesn't pass it on, we're going to lose what he knows how to do.
yeah. And you want to
So, I mean,
contribute to that as well?
yeah, to answer your question,
Yeah,
I try and help whoever I can. Um, we belong to an online group that are a bunch of us jewelers, and some of the new people come on and ask a question, and the more experienced ones, try and give them answers. Um, I've even used them because, about 4 years ago, I bought a laser, which I think they came out about 30 years ago, and they were just way too expensive when we first started doing our
yeah,
business. So, I mean, I did everything old school with a torch. And there are things you can do with the laser that are feasibly impossible to do with a torch. I mean, with a torch, a lot of stones you'd have to remove because the ring gets too hot.
hmm,
Where with the laser, I can go in and do repairs right next to a stone and not have to worry about the stone burning. And so, I mean, I've asked some of the guys that have had them for several years, how do I do this? And they'll explain the parameters of the machine so I can do the job. And so you're always learning. I don't care
yeah,
what business you're in. My grandfather always taught me that you're constantly learning from everybody around you. And smart little kid, I said, well, what about the bum? And he says, well, you learn that you don't want to live like that. And it's like, okay, so, and he goes, when you quit learning, you might as well start shoveling the dirt, because
yeah.
it's we should
Yeah.
always be learning and growing as people.
Couple of questions then, Daniel, at the end, because a fascinating discussion on jewelry I wasn't aware of. Um, First of all, how do you define your own success? What is success for you?
For me, my success is having enough money that I can spend time with my family. Because I know we 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 could take our business and make millions for us, but that means my wife and I would be at the bench, 80 hours a week, and you wouldn't have a life. So, I mean, to me, having enough money that I can pay my bills and still go out and have fun and do things and travel, to me, that's success. And I know there's a lot of jewelers out there that, their store makes over $1 million a year profit.
Yeah.
And that's not where I ever wanted to go.
It's sounds like a personal choice you have to make to identify what you
Yes.
find important or not. Brings me to my last question, unfortunately, given the time, Daniel, but to young people out there, what kind of advice would you give them if they decide to go down this route or becoming an independent entrepreneur?
The biggest thing is know that you're going to have mistakes. We all learn. I mean, we should be learning from our mistakes and be willing to attempt stuff, because if you're not willing to take the attempt and possibly fail, you can't grow, and you'll never succeed as an entrepreneur, because I don't know any entrepreneur that's jumped into a business that hasn't tripped and failed and had problems that they had to figure out how to overcome. And that's part of life. Yeah. If you're not pushing yourself forward, as grandma said, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, brush yourself off, and keep moving forward.
It's very recognizable, but it's so good to hear it again from somebody who has experienced that. So, Daniel, we've come to the end of our interview for the brand called You. I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to talk to us, and that our chance meeting on the hallway in a dormitory has led to this great little conversation. I want to thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me. This has been real fun.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.